All right, we're wrapping up Genesis 49 and 50. So 49 gives you a sort of explains what happens to the 12 tribes of Israel. So Jacob, who's called Israel, has these children, and he sort of gives these blessings, but they're also kind of predictions of what's going to happen in many ways. And sometimes it helps, like they were random stories as you're going through. Perhaps you remember in chapter 35, Reuben ends up sleeping with basically his mother-in-law, so one of Jacob's wives. And so you hear, it comes back here, turbulent as water, you will not excel because you got into your father's bed and defiled it, right? So Reuben's tribe is not overly successful in comparison to many of the tribes, and he's sort of, this is a basically kind of a curse. This is an expectation because of what happened when Reuben was younger. So it goes through and it kind of continues on with that. So Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their knives are vicious weapons. If you remember back in chapter 34, when their sister was assaulted, they went a bit off the deep end. So it says, they're going to be pretty angry. It lumps them together. These are the only two that are lumped together. But basically it says, I will disperse them throughout Jacob and scatter them throughout Israel. That's what it says right here. So Simeon and Levi turns out to be the priesthood. They don't actually end up with a sort of land. They don't have land. And Simeon, as you read, usually it gets lumped in with Judah. They don't seem to have their own land. So this comment, I will disperse them throughout Israel. They never really have, neither of those tribes have their own real secure ancestral land as you go on. So it goes to Judah. And interestingly, if you're sort of following through the story, Joseph obviously is a big highlight in the whole story of Joseph, and his two sons Ephraim and Manasseh are going to be greatly blessed, and he's going to have many descendants that come from him. But the line that goes down from Abraham through Jesus actually goes through Judah. Interestingly. So, and there is a pretty long section on Judah. Judah is a lion. So when Jesus is called the Lion of Judah, you don't have to wonder where. And it says the scepter will not depart from Judah. So the rulership is going to come through that line of Judah. It does down to David. Judah is also the sort of rightful king that stays in Jerusalem when the tribe splits up after David. And then it makes its way to all the way to Jesus. So he ties his donkey to a vine. Donkey is a sign of royalty. And also, not coincidentally, what Jesus rode in to the Jerusalem on the day when he had his triumphal entry, right? So he washes his clothes in wine and his robes in the blood of grapes. So that's sort of a strange expression, but it's in abundance. He's so abundant that he could even wash his clothes in fine wine type of thing. So it goes through I won't go through every son. Some of them are, Issachar is a strong donkey laying down between the saddlebags, right? So there's all various different ones. I will mention Dan, because he's sort of a unique one. This first comment, most people believe, is Samson actually came from the tribe of Dan. So he would judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. So Samson was a judge in Judges. But more specifically, Dan will be a snake by the road, a viper beside the path that bites the horse's heels. So this is probably a not so veiled reference to back to the Garden of Eden, because Dan as a tribe is very strongly connected to idol worship. And there's some interesting extra biblical, meaning outside of the Bible text, but ancient texts that have lots of stories and commentaries on the tribe of Dan. But they were known to be particularly unfaithful, and sometimes they are not included. So like in Revelations at the end, Revelation 7, they are replaced by Manasseh in the list of tribes. So Dan has a pretty rocky history as it goes through, and then finishes with a nice long section on Joseph's fruitful vine, and it goes on and tells all of the blessings that Joseph's tribes will have. So That is it. This is interesting. These are the tribes of Israel, 12 in all, right? And he blessed them. What you'll find, the expression, the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes, it gets a little tricky in terms of if you're the type of person that's very exact and you say, I want 12, the number 12, that actually gets a little ropey because at times, basically, the Levites, they don't have a land promise. They're going to be priests and servants. So eventually, in many of the situations, they sort of leave them out of the tribes because they don't have a land allotment when they're talking about the tribes. But everybody knows the Levites are a tribe. So what they do in most of the cases, if they want to have 12 still in the names, they leave Joseph out and they put Israel. They put Ephraim and Manasseh in, and Ephraim and Manasseh are still sort of they are actually tracked by those names as you're moving around in the tribes. So even when Joseph was there, they're sort of still there. So it was kind of 13 tribes, but then the Levites weren't really included. And then eventually Dan kind of gets kicked out. And interesting is he's replaced by Manasseh, and Joseph is still in there, presumably because Joseph's his hereditary sort of line would go to Ephraim. So you could put Joseph or, in theory, Ephraim there. So if you're looking for very precise, this is exactly how it works. And there's always 12, like the disciples, there's 12. And when one leaves, they try to replace them. It's a little more fluid. The 12 tribes there's a group of people that are called the 12 tribes. Then the list of them isn't always exactly the same. It roughly is, but if you someday are looking at it and you're looking at one list and you're like, wait a second, there's a name off on this list, or there's two names off on this. That is why that happens. So then we move into Genesis 50, and it's pretty much just the end. It's Jacob's burial, which is a big fancy event. If you want to read about it, turns into quite the excitement. And then there is some on Joseph. So basically, after the father dies, Joseph's brothers sort of say, this is the one chance where things could go wobbly. Maybe he was just trying to honor his father, which was a very important commandment back then. So now if he was holding a grudge, here's the time that he'd sort of come back against us. But of course, Joseph doesn't. You planned evil against me. God planned it for good to bring about the present result, the survival of many people. So that's a sort of famous verse, right? That what you planned for evil, God planned for good. And then that is the end of Joseph. He makes them promise to bring his remains. He's what do you call it? He is the Egyptians embalm. There you go. He is embalmed, so his remains remain, if that makes sense. And later, reasonably much later, in Exodus, they do bring his remains back to the Holy Land when they go. So that is the end of Genesis. 50 chapters, you did it. It takes quite a bit of work and quite a bit of slog. There's some really awesome stuff in the first 11 chapters, 12 chapters of Genesis. Not that the rest isn't awesome, but that's very foundational, referenced back to all through the Bible all the time, because those first 11 chapters sort of explain how the world came to be, right? It finishes with the table of 70 nations. So you start with Adam and Eve, go all the way through the foundational stories up to the 70 nations. So it's sort of saying, hey, by the way, this is how we got where we are. And then first line in chapter 12 is, and I'm picking Abraham as my people. He is my portion out of this big world that has been given over to, at that point, Satan. And I am going to pick these people to be mine, and I will be their God. And then the rest of Genesis is that story. And it works its way up through until you get the 12 tribes, which is really the people, the chosen people. Like Abraham is a person, and basically that the rest of Genesis is the story of how you get the people of Israel. So then the rest of the Old Testament, for the most part, is what happened to those chosen people up to Jesus, when that promise that was made to Abraham is fulfilled in Jesus. Then you've got the New Testament, which is the New Covenant, which should be called the New Covenant. Testament, we don't really understand that word anymore. So it's the New Covenant is the New Testament that tells you the story with Jesus and on. So, hope you enjoyed Genesis. I pray that you have been blessed. See you next time.